All right, Jesse. We're at that point. Are you ready for rapid fire?
Fire away, baby.
Okay. Fill in the blank. The transfer portal opened today, and it's blank that Notre Dame has its full blue gold football game available on YouTube for everyone to watch.
Not so, or the timing on that is not so. What's the word? It slipped me. I had this the entire day. I read the rundown, and the timing is not coincidental at the end of the day, because I think it's very obvious that Notre Dame kind of strategically planned this. You open the portal, you put your spring game on YouTube. If there's if there's certain guys that enter the portal, or if there's maybe some teams who are trying to pull some guys into the portal, what do you look at when there's not a lot of film out there? It's the spring game. So I think it's, I think we kind of talked about this yesterday on the show. I think it's really nice and kind of advantageous of Notre Dame, it's nice on Notre Dame's part and advantageous on the players' part when this spring game is out there for everyone to see, because not everyone has game reps on film or huddle film that they can send out to these teams. And so all you have is either practice film or scrimmage film, and that's what the blue gold game was. So it's great for guys that are buried on the depth chart. Maybe, someone like Brian Urlacher, who's going to end up transferring out. And, at the end of the day, Kennedy Urlacher didn't necessarily probably need it because he was so highly recruited and he is still young and freshly removed out of high school. But it's just a great thing for the players.
Marcus Freeman's not coaching scared. It's like the opposite of Lincoln Riley, Matt Rule, Bill Belichick, go on down the list, just to name a few. Funny how Belichick comes to college, all of a sudden he's got this social media presence after he's like, Instaface and all this different stuff when he's with the Patriots, and he's got this new image supposedly because of the girlfriend and everything, but he's still as paranoid as ever, with everything, canceling the blue gold game and all that kind of stuff. And I think you're absolutely right. Not only is Marcus Freeman not shying away from playing the blue gold game and having it televised, because that's the other thing, even a lot of the schools, the big schools that still played their spring game, they were afraid to televise them. And so here's Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame. It's like, yeah, we're going to put it on Peacock. Oh, and not only are we going to put it on Peacock, we're going to put it on YouTube for literally the whole world to see. And I think it's the point that you're talking about. He's not afraid of losing these guys on the depth chart. I think it's the opposite. He's actually helping these guys and giving them an opportunity by allowing, the reps that they were able to get out there in the spring game to be seen by some of these coaches. Because I think, as you said, like not everyone has as much film as a starting quarterback or a starting offensive lineman or a starting linebacker or even a guy who's on the two deep, so there's a lot of guys buried deeper on the depth chart that need an opportunity like that for somebody to see him, and they're keeping it out there. So I think that it is awesome. And again, he's not coaching scared and he's not running away from it. He's embracing it. Justin wants to know, will more Notre Dame players enter the portal after the last practice next week? Sorry.
When is the official last practice? I thought that was going to be sometime this week.
So we don't know definitely. I believe the date that I heard is, well, I'll tell you this. We have a press conference 1 week from today with Marcus Freeman. We just got the reminder today. 1 week from today, we're going to have a press conference with Marcus Freeman. So by then, I'm pretty sure that spring practice is going to be completely in the books. I mean, Urlacher obviously went into the portal before practice was over. In all likelihood, you're going to see, a few more players trickling into the portal. Like the word we've got is, more just what we were talking about, depth type guys than anything. But we will be on sort of alert. We'll be on watch to see what happens with the quarterbacks as well.
So do you want to go out on a limb and give me a bold prediction of someone that might enter the portal that could be surprising?
No, we're not going to do that.
Come on.
No, we're not. We don't name names. Fill in the blank. Kennedy Urlacher entering the transfer portal today is blank.
Not surprising. He was, probably considered their fourth or fifth safety on the depth chart at this moment. You have, a Don Schuler who's in the same class as you, already in that kind of starting position. And then you have Tay Johnson, a freshman that's younger than you, who has already, had a great spring and is projecting to be above you as well. So when you take both of those things into consideration, both young guys, sophomore and freshman, I just think that there's one, it shows a great amount of depth and talent at that position, which is never a bad thing, but it also shows kind of how far that Urlacher was buried with no
Yeah.
real in goal in sight because of how young the people ahead of him are at the end of the day.
I mean, as you look at the guys in that room, Tabron Benny Powell, Jadon Blair, Tay Johnson, Brandon Logan, Ethan Long, Ben Minich, Adon Schuler, Jalen Stroman, Luke Talich. I mean, there are minimum 4 guys who would be ahead of Kennedy Urlacher on the depth chart right now. And again, this is why we were talking about it yesterday with the depth and the talent that they've got in that room. How can they utilize that potentially? Like could they roll 3 safeties out there from time to time? And Jesse White boarded it up yesterday and showed a lot of that. And I mean, when you look at all those names right there, it's easy to see why he would make the decision because look, he just played all but 2 games as a true freshman. And most of that action was on special teams. So he has already burned a year of eligibility. Does Kennedy Urlacher want to come back to Notre Dame for another year and basically be a special teams player who maybe gets some little dabbles from time to time and really have to work to get himself into any kind of rotation out there with the defense based on the guys who are in that room? Or do you just want to go someplace else and have 3 years to play? I mean, obviously his decision was you go someplace and have 3 years to play, but it shows how deep the room is. And it also shows how far that room has come in, a relatively short amount of time. But I mean, to be honest, like he came in when he was recruited, one service had him as a 4-star, the others had him at a 3-star. So I, like as big a name as it was, because that's the other thing as well. Like when I saw it, it's like it was a little bit jarring just because of the name that's attached to it, and maybe because of the fact that we were just watching or talking about him yesterday, the safeties specifically yesterday, and he was one of the safeties that we talked about. So like it was a little bit jarring, but ultimately not surprising, because of just the depth and the talent that's in that room. You okay over there?
Yes, I'm back.
All right. So Marcus Freeman was on JD Pickle's On 3 podcast this week.
Your
Freeman,
favorite person.
Yeah, hey. He talked a little bit about his quarterback competition, and I don't have anything against the guy personally. Like just to get that out there. It was a specific thing that I think we were talking about last week. Like it's more like national guys and their opinion. This has actually come up on the Champions Lounge this week, but we don't have to digress on that right now. So Freeman, in the course of this conversation with Pickle, talked about his quarterback competition and if there is a current pecking order.
I truly believe we have 3 quarterbacks that could all start for Notre Dame and help us win in every game we play. And as much as that is an awesome situation, it's a difficult one too, because ultimately as we get ready for the Miami, Florida, we can only have one being a starter. And so we have time to figure out who that guy is going to be. They're all doing things really, really well. Everybody has areas of improvement, but I've been so pleased with the collective group of those 3 guys and the way they performed, the way they've handled some difficult situations in spring ball, and the way they've led the offense to and constantly improve.
So, Jess, anything overly revelatory there?
No, nothing over revelatory. And I think here's my biggest takeaway from that. Marcus Freeman could be a career politician because he is really good at saying stuff but not saying stuff at the same time. And if that's really true, what he's saying, that all 3 guys could be starting, I think that lends the opportunity, and that's the kind of conversations that he's having. I think that lends to that maybe none of them do go to the transfer portal at the end of the day, right? But I still think he's wrong because you can't tell me that all three of these guys could equally take you to the same spot at the end of the day. It's just
they're
just
still
not
on his
true.
roster right now, so he's not gonna say anything negative about any of them. I think you at least have to give him that. Again, unlike previous regimes, he's not going to say anything against any of them. Apparently, it's Pickell. Pickell is how it's said. Literally, the first time that I ever laid any ears on his show was when I saw that he had Marcus Freeman on as a guest. Was it yesterday or the day before? And I went in and found listened to the interview, but obviously the guy's not saying his name over the course of the interview. So literally it's the only time I've only seen it written. So Pickell apparently is how it's pronounced. I do apologize, but YouTube shows don't tend to come with name pronunciations.
No, they do not.
As if we didn't say Stiers, I'm sure that it would be said incorrectly. So next question. Freeman also discussed the qualities he's looking for from his starting quarterback with Mr. Pickell.
Got to look at many different things in the criteria of what we want out of our starting quarterback. But number one, you got to take care of the football. You got to make good decisions and take care of the football. And then, when all else fails, we want the guy that's going to help us make plays. And that's with your legs, with your arm, with your decision making, and a guy that can lead this offense that the guys want to play for and guys want to follow. But we have obviously criteria in terms of decision making, completions, and taking care of the football. But that always doesn't tell the story, right? It is sometimes the outcome isn't a reflection of the reality of what went wrong or what went right with the play. And so we have to be really, really subjective in saying these are the things that we believe our starting quarterback must do well.
Okay, Jess. So you just heard that, and I heard that, and I thought about some of the comments that Marcus Freeman made after the Blue Gold game. So let's get a quick refresher. This is right after the Blue Gold game.
A lot of teaching opportunities, I'm sure. I'm not truly outcome driven, so I think we had one turnover. And then again, I don't know if it was the route, the throw, but it was a lot of good from all three guys and a lot of teaching opportunities, as we'll go back and watch. But it was a reflection of how the first 11 practices have been. Those guys have been battling. They've all improved. They're all, doing some really good things. And it's crazy to think this. You got three guys that all can lead your program to a victory, right, and be your starting quarterback. So we'll evaluate it. We'll talk about it and, have discussions moving forward. Again, you would like to be able to kind of go in the fall with a two quarterback battle. It's really hard with truly having a three quarterback battle, but we got to sit down and have conversations about what's best for our program, what's best for our quarterbacks, and, we'll make those decisions in the future.
Anything jump out at you from either or
Yes.
both of those cuts? Go ahead.
Yes. The first thing he said on the On3 show was that they need a quarterback who can take care of the ball. And the first thing he mentioned after the Blue Gold game was the interception, but didn't know how it transpired, basically.
And then he sort of referenced that in the On3 show as well, right? Like, oh, I'm not outcome driven and that kind of thing. So it feels like, without saying it, he was referencing, and sort of like going back and justifying the CJ Carr interception in the On3 interview without actually saying it in that interview, and obviously without saying any names in that interview as well.
I just love that he said in the On3 interview, we need a guy who can make plays at the quarterback position.
Yes.
No, really, you don't say. You're not looking for the guy who can be the most playmaker.
We'd prefer a playmaker rather than a pedestrian playing quarterback.
Yeah, like what? Just give me something to actually chew on, Marcus Freeman.
Yes. And I mean, because like
Why do you even do these shows? Because you're not lending any information,
Well, I mean, you knew that he wasn't going to say anything, though, right? You knew he would play straight up politician with any questions that pertained to the quarterbacks, right? Because there wasn't anything new in there. Because he basically repeated it in that second cut in the on three about protect the ball, playmaker, all that kind of stuff. We want completions. Okay. Completions are one of the things that we look at. Okay. So yeah, if you want to decipher any of that and try to figure out who he was referencing first, second, and third in any of those cuts, which everyone was doing on the first day of spring practice, about a month or so ago, go ahead, have at it. We'll see what happens. So yeah, didn't necessarily go any deeper, but I mean, we could potentially get an inkling depending on what happens here in the next 10 days or so, with the portal now open. So Notre Dame women's basketball got a commitment today from Gisela Sanchez from Kansas State University, 6'4" forward. Do you have any thoughts on this commitment, first of all, Jess?
Yeah, I mean, she's a career I don't want to say it like that. She has always come off the bench, whether she was at Arizona or Kansas State. And so what I see for her, when you're trying to rebuild a roster, when you don't have, like they could barely field the team right now if they needed to go out there and play a game tomorrow. And so not every transfer portal pickup is going to be this, Olivia Miles, Leah King, etc. You still have to build depth and still have quality players, even if they're going to come off your bench. And also having good players is good for, practicing and developing, some of these starters that are going to be in the rotation next season. And so I know it doesn't look sexy because it ultimately isn't sexy at the end of the day, but it's just a nice, solid depth piece and someone that you can rely on with a ton of experience to come off the bench for you at some point.
Yeah, Christopher, you've actually got the numbers on the wrong side of your decimal points there. It's not 2.4. She averaged 4.2. Not a whole lot more, but a little bit more. I mean, she gives them size. She gives them experience. Malaya Coles, the transfer they got from Wake Forest last year, definitely more productive in her time at Wake Forest and a team that Notre Dame, has obviously seen a lot more, but they need numbers at this point, and this is definitely more of a depth piece. But again, she does have a lot of experience, and you need some numbers because literally you had no forwards before last week, and now you've got a couple of them in Coles and now Sanchez. And again, they're far from done. This is far from what the final roster is going to look like. They're going to be making, adding more players via the transfer portal, and there are still something like 1,200 players available in the transfer portal, of varying levels. But at the very least, they needed some size, and this gives them some size. And what I like about both of these forwards as well is they're more athletic, kind of in the Westbeld, Carlin, type molds in terms of players, who should be able to get up and down the floor a bit. And that's obviously the style that Niele Ivey likes playing. And so these are both players who I think can accomplish that and give you some size and experience as well.
So here's my thing is we're removed from this season. I can talk about this and be more critical.
Uh-oh, here we go. Where's this going?
Maybe the accumulation of all the 4 or 5-star guards isn't the recipe, Maybe having a star-studded lineup isn't the recipe. Maybe it is, cutting back on the stars and playing more as a team and being centrally kind of focused through one player. I don't know. But obviously last season's recipe didn't work. And so what is this season's recipe going to look like? And are you going to lean more on some role players and some, not as quality. I guess you could say quality minutes, right? Like do they constantly need a trio of Olivia Miles, Sonia Citron, and Hannah Hidalgo? On paper, it looks great and it raises our expectations, but obviously it didn't work at the end of the day. And so is adding more kind of role players and allowing Hannah to just really do her thing, the recipe this year, and will that take them farther? I just think it's something to think about. I'm not saying I necessarily am all on board with it, but last year's recipe clearly didn't work. And so I don't know how much you can stack all this talent at the guard position and expect to go far into the tournament.
Well, two things. One, it's definitely going to be Hannah Hidalgo's team this year because you don't have Sonia Citron. You don't have Maddie Westbeld. You don't have Olivia Miles. I don't know. I don't know if I'm buying the complete addition by subtraction like Brian NY is saying. I'm not going that because it's not like if Sonia Citron had one more year of eligibility remaining, like you wouldn't want her on your team.
Exactly.
Again, these are the first pieces. I get what you're saying. There's going to be a sort of higher, what I would still call, consider a higher caliber of player that'll be added to this team before it's all said and done, but it's definitely going to be Hidalgo's team as well. It's going to look, no matter what, it's going to look a heck of a lot different just because of the bulk churn that you had from this past season. And, and again, a lot of people still want to, kind of write this off as not write it off, but they still consider this, like some kind of great upheaval within the program. I mean, the biggest churn that you had, you just lost 3 players to the WNBA draft, as well as Liza Carlin, so that's 4 players just by themselves right there. This is far less about what happened with players leaving via the transfer portal than it is the players that you lost because their eligibility ran out. You and that earpiece are just driving me nuts tonight. I'm going to tell you that. As it rubs against your zipper or whatever that is right there. Fill in the blank. Colorado retiring the numbers of Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter after 2 seasons each with the Buffaloes is blank.
Is a bit obnoxious, is a bit premature, unwarranted. I mean, you could go down the line. There's definitely a bigger case for Hunter, because he did win the Heisman and all that good stuff and had 2 really good seasons at Colorado. But I mean, Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow never got their number retired. And you're telling me Shedeur Sanders already has his number retired? You want to talk about nepotism? That is in the definition in the dictionary.
Yeah, I mean, I can see, like you said, I can see Travis Hunter because at least the guy won the freaking Heisman Trophy, and it had been quite a while,
right?
Since I think Rashaan Salam was their last Heisman,
and
Trophy
it was a
winner.
2-way player. The guy's phenomenal.
Yeah, exactly. So it's you want to retire the jersey of a Heisman winner, okay, but it's it's literally okay, here we go. Deion gets to see.
But do you think the conversation was we're going to retire Travis's, and then they were like, well,
if we got to retire, we have to do Shedeur,
he's going to feel some type of way and get his feelings hurt. I don't know. You can convince me on Travis 100%, but Shedeur has he did nothing. It's not like he even set school records.
That's what I was going to say.
Heisman,
because he was only there for 2 years.
He was just an average quarterback that was there for 2 years.
He's basically the biggest accomplishment that he has is he's going to be a first-round draft pick. That's it. So it seems quite a bit over the top, but I mean it's part of the Coach Prime Deion thing, it over the top and Deion go hand in hand. So I guess none of us should be quite surprised that Shedeur is getting his number retired as well. But I agree. I think you got to take him separately because Travis Hunter definitely deserves it because of the fact that he won a Heisman Trophy there. So an interesting basketball question here, or at least a unique basketball question. Bill Simmons and Kevin Wildes, Kevin, of course, from Fox Sports, Bill Simmons from the Ringer Podcast Network. They did a segment on Simmons' show recently. Wildes had this idea about the next thing in sports and what it should be in basketball. It's basically guy comes up the court, you're dribbling the ball up the court, and you take off in the air. You launch yourself from the top of the key behind the three-point line, but you don't release the ball. Like you've got forward momentum going. You don't release the ball until you're somewhere, around the free throw line. And, it's ultimately a three-point shot because you took off behind the line, but the distance is shorter because you're shooting it near the free throw line where you let it go. So do you buy or sell this possibility ever becoming a thing?
So, like, the way I envision this is you got, like, Russell Westbrook, like, just, you know how he plays, just, like,
Right.
110%, right?
Racing up court.
So I just imagine him racing up court and then taking off from the three-point line like he's going for a dunk, but instead he kind of, he basically goes as far as he can, and then he lets go of the ball and tries to make a shot. And so is that technically considered a three-point shot because he took off from behind the three-point line? That would be my first question.
It is. As long as you leave the ground behind the line, it is still considered a three-point shot.
Okay. I think someone will attempt this at some point, but I don't think it'll become a reoccurring thing. I think you could maybe find a way to sneak this in here or there, but once a team comes savvy to it, like all you got to do is just stick some bodies into a lane and someone's going to take off and run into a wall at the three-point line.
That's what I'm thinking. Like you just put your center at the top of the key and have him
and you
extend
just
his
tell him to
arms
get
and you
screwed,
cut it off.
basically.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And they'll whack them pretty hard too, and that'll be the last time that they'll do it. But again, it might be something that you can do sneaky, or maybe something at the end of the game you're trying to sneak in, some sort of play that you draw up. I feel like it's very situational, and it will never become an everyday shot.
This has been like 30 plus years ago when I was in the Army and then in college, getting out of Army. I had this, the last time I played like consistent, like basketball video game, actually before you got the college basketball, the EA Sports many years ago, before they stopped doing it. But I had this NBA basketball game and I used to be the Phoenix Suns. And so I would have Kevin Johnson bring the ball up the court, and I would do this almost every possession up court. I'd have him race up court and launch himself from the top of the key and then release it, midair with his momentum going towards the basket. It worked in the video games, but I think there's a reason that it won't work in an actual basketball game, is because it would ultimately, once you do it a couple of times, it just becomes too easy to defend. You just put somebody big at the top of the key and you put a stop to it. But I thought it was a unique idea anyway.
That's a very Kevin Wildes and Bill Simmons discussion.
Yes, I think so.
That is a very an on-par conversation if you stick those two in a room. I like Kevin Wildes, by the way. I think he's entertaining. I think he knows a lot of information. And while I like Nick Wright, I think it takes a very strong personality to work with Nick Wright every single day.
Oh, is he the guy that's on the show with Nick Wright?
And Chris Broussard, yeah.
Okay.
He's basically the host of that show.
Okay, because I haven't seen very much of that show. Basically, what I know of Kevin Wildes is when he comes on every few months on the Simmons podcast. So, all right. But I agree. Like he always has, like
very interesting spins on things.
Yes, for sure. Because I think that, like the segment that they did was like the next big thing in sports, literally. So he's always coming in like half-baked ideas is what they do, so they always come up with a lot of unique stuff when those two spin it back and forth together. So you are our resident NBA fan on the show. And Charles Barkley says Oklahoma City, Boston, and Cleveland are the only three teams that can win a title this season. So would you take those three teams or the field to win it all?
Oh, I would definitely take those three, or I would take those three teams in a heartbeat. Like if you gave me you gave me all three of those teams versus the field, and gave me like plus 100 odds, I would absolutely hammer the heck out of that thing. I think that there is only one other team that could be considered in this conversation. I think Charles Barkley got 3 of the 4 correct. Do you have any idea who that fourth team might be?
Are you going to go Lakers? He said no way to the Lakers. I was listening to him on the SI Media podcast today, and I think that the question was actually starting with the Lakers, and he said no way, just because simply they are not good enough to win it all.
That's
especially compared to those other 3 teams.
That's just simply wrong at the end of the day. First of all, you have the greatest, if not the second greatest basketball player ever, the man who just continues to defy age, the most playoff experience of all time, LeBron James. You add one of the best scorers in basketball, Luka Doncic, and really the Lakers have a ton of depth on their bench in terms of, like, you want to talk about true role players, guys who can be 3 and D, guard the perimeter, provide, really good defense down the stretch. That's them. So you give me Luka Doncic, who took the Mavs to the finals last year, and then you give him LeBron, who just goes to about, again, has all the playoff legacy and dominance that he has, and then you combine, JJ Redick has been a really good coach this season. As much as no one wants to talk about that, right? Because everyone just made fun of JJ Redick and made fun of LeBron because that was his guy coming from his podcast show or whatever. Like, you watch whenever JJ Redick needs to defensively scheme up a team, like when they played the Mavs a couple weeks ago and had to play against Anthony Davis, they basically high-load Anthony Davis double team the entire game, and he finished the game with like 8 points. Like, if JJ Redick comes out with a strategic defensive plan like he has all season in these situations, and you combine that again with LeBron, Luka Doncic, I don't know how you can't – like, my finals matchup is Lakers versus Cavs at the end of the day.
Can you repeat that over the course of a 7-game series, though? Can you it's one thing for him to come up, with a plan in game 1 or in the middle of the series, but can you be successful repeating that over the course of the series when the other team is making its own adjustments?
And that would be the biggest question. Like, how long can they actually get away with that game? Because that's what's so hard about the NBA is everyone is so skilled and talented, so you can't get away with the same thing night in and night out. Just because it works one night doesn't, like, there's just as many good coaches on the other side that can scheme and find a way, to find a loophole in whatever you're doing defensively. So not to get too far down this kind of rabbit hole or tangent, but I think the Lakers have an opportunity. And my finals matchup is Lakers versus Cavs.
Lakers Cavs. That would be interesting if that happens. I'm sure that ESPN and ABC are vehemently pulling that doesn't happen. They're hoping that it's going to be Celtics Cavs, but I'm sure they're dreading Cleveland OKC, and maybe that's what they end up getting. So who knows? All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. Appreciate all the questions as always in the mailbag show. It'll be we in, we out day tomorrow. So we'll have the thread up on the Champions Lounge later on, and you can get your questions in for tomorrow's show. Vince is going to be in, and I think we're all 3 going to be here on Friday for the first time in a few weeks.
Well, if Vince is going to be here, then I'm not going to be here.
All right, that's fair. It's very fair. All right. Hit the like button before you leave, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.